Game week, OU continues to host top targets during spring practice. All of this is leading up to the big event on Sunday where OU hopes to have recruits on campus from 2027 and 2028.
What's up, people? It's game week. We got a spring game going down April 18th, Saturday. I believe it's 12 o'clock is when they're gonna kick off. But yeah, man, it should be a really fun event. Looks like it's gonna rain all week or whatnot and do what it does, and it's gonna be sunny that day. So if you're out there, definitely check it out. If you're in Norman, come and check it out. Check out the spring game. Pack the Palace, right? I know Jay will be there from Unfair Sports. I'll be there. Jason should be there. Should be a whole bunch of everybody there. So I'm excited to get out there and just kind of see what these guys got. A lot of intriguing battles, a lot of intriguing places that I want to start, I want to look at, and all the rest of that stuff. But as we get into more of that tonight, or a little bit tonight, excuse me. We'll get into more of that on Thursday. But man, just excited. You guys know exactly what this means. Thus far, no new injuries, no anything like that. So I mean, everything is looking up. We can just get through Saturday. Man, I'm telling you, it's gonna be fun. But with that being said, you know why we're here. Kchris Griffin, Horns Down Podcast, Chris Mason, Sooners 360. Definitely go out there, check out the Patreon, go check out the website, go check out everything that Chris Mason is doing. We're here for recruiting tonight, and it seems like we got a lot of visitors lined up per usual for a spring game event. But at the same time, just feeling really good, especially with the way that this 27 class is trending, and then also the other classes as well, right? We've been talking about that all along, but I won't be any more long-winded than I have been, and I'll pass the mic to Chris Mason to get us started.
Yeah, OU's got the spring games coming up. They've got a lot of. Probably have about 20, 25 visitors show up, depending upon how many verbal commitments are there. I think something along those lines. It's definitely a big event. When you have 20 commits, Chris, one of the things OU just needs to do is just continue to build that relationship between the class and have the class really bond, and that's one of the things that can really help with decommits, because we know OU's class is so talented that guys are coming after them, right? So it's just another chance for everybody to bond, and a chance for those guys to be on campus with the coaches and be on campus with the players, and just get that feeling of the OU brotherhood. The OU culture. Those things, those intangible things that OU has done an effective job selling players on. So that'll be a big part of that. Before we get to spring game, though, Chris, a couple of guys have made their way to campus last week. Three big names, and then a name to track who could turn into a big name for the Sooners. So, Chris, the first thing is, on Thursday, Ben Kolar and Case Alexander were on campus. They came in for unofficial visits. Ben Kolar's already done an interview with On3 and 247 about the visit, really talking up Witten. Basically says, I love seeing, when I'll paraphrase one of the quotes, he says, I loved watching practice and seeing OU in 12 formation so much. I love what Witten's doing in terms of what he brings. He says his football knowledge is just so elite that talking to him is just great. So that's another paraphrase. So he's trying to get Ben Kolar. He's trying to lock that down and get the second tight end for this class in 2027. Because I really feel like if they don't get Ben Kolar, they're probably just going to take a pass and move on to 2028, where they've already starting to get several guys visiting. But Ben Kolar wasn't much of a surprise. I do think Case Alexander is a little more interesting, just because he's back on campus. About 8 weeks ago, Penn State folks had thought they sort of had this wrapped up and were kind of expecting a commitment. Since then, he's kind of rolled things back a little bit, and it seems like OU's doing a good job recruiting him. And again, it looks like they want a third linebacker in the class, but it looks to me like it could be Alexander or bust. Although Marcus Boganowski was also on campus on Thursday. Came down to observe practice, and he was standing next to his brother. He doesn't quite look as big as his brother, but his brother was all in pads too. So you always have to worry about some of those pictures being a little deceptive. But he doesn't look quite as big as his brother. But that's something to think about. But I'm going to paraphrase a Sooner fan I know, and he basically said if Case Alexander turns down being coached by Brent Venables and playing linebacker for this Sooner defense, then he's just not interested in staying in state. There's nothing OU can do about that. He's just looking to go out of state, go play at Penn State with his brother Cooper. There's no fault to OU in this recruiting. If he's turning down Brent and being a linebacker for the Sooners, then he just wants to go out of state. So. Does that help?
A little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. There you go. So I just needed to do something there. I need to turn some other. There we go. So he visited, and I think there's a good shot that they land Case, just because his dad obviously was Stephen Alexander, so there's some Sooner connections there, and the tight end room. You can kind of understand why he'd want to go to Iowa State and follow the Iowa State tight end group when Cooper chose that out of high school, because Joe John Finley kind of dropped the ball in that recruiting. But at linebacker recruiting and linebacker play, how do you turn down Brent and the linebackers they've got and the guys they've got playing? So
it's hard, especially when on that side of the ball, and then kind of, I can't wait for it to hit the offensive side of the ball, but how not only multiple and how crazy and chaotic that defense is, and how a lot of players are clawing to get a chance to play in this defense, but also the simple fact that the motto is there. The mantra is there. We're going to play the best players, whether you're a freshman or you're a 5th or 6th year senior, So you're going to have an opportunity, but you're going to have to come here and compete, just like anywhere else you go. But here, it's not necessarily given that, hey, the incumbent starter is going to remain that. We've seen guys, Eli Bowen, come in middle of the season and become a freshman All-American. We've seen Guillory, because of injuries and other things that happened, but go out there and what was he? I don't know, Chris Mason. I get it. It's a difficult defense, especially at that position. If you're going to be Mike or whatever the case may be, but at that position there, like I've told you before, you're going to get 2 degrees. You're going to get dual degrees, undergrad. You're going to get one off the field and then one on the field. So, it just depends on what you wanted to do. But I definitely agree with you. If he doesn't choose the good guys, definitely means that he wants to get out of state and see greener pastures, right?
Yeah, it's just there won't be any blame, on the OU side of things. So it also sounds like, and Brandon Drum's the only one reporting this right now, that Gabriel Osborne was on campus either Friday or Saturday. That's what he indicated on his podcast. And I've not seen any follow-up interviews to kind of confirm that. Now, the name I need you to think about, and I'm going to preface this by, I've already previously interviewed this kid, so I know this kid, I know his dad. So I'm gonna preface, and I'm a little biased here, so I'm giving my bias to you out in front, right? Okay. So Norman North quarterback, 2028 quarterback Nash Henry was on campus on Thursday, and with hanging out with Arbuckle, and he was invited to come to practice. OU's only got one QB offer out right now for 2028, and that's Ty Simpson's younger brother.
Interesting.
And I don't know that OU, and lots of teams have offered him. I don't know that OU has any real hook there to kind of win that recruiting. So I think by this summer, OU probably needs to offer at least one more 2028 quarterback. And Nash, Nash is 6'4", nearly 200 pounds. He had an excellent first-year campaign as a sophomore. Last year, he has a bunch of P4 offers. His dad is in the Oklahoma City area. So I think he's going to be at the spring game this Saturday. I think he's at some level. I think he may end up in the mix for what OU ends up doing at quarterback. And he threw for nearly 3,500 yards last year.
And where's he from again?
He's from Norman North.
Okay, gotcha.
So we'll see how that tracks. He's got offers from Stanford, Baylor. I mean, he's been to Ole Miss, Arkansas, K-State. So he's got a lot of guys. He's got a lot of schools interested in him.
Chris Mason, I may need to pop out to a game. It's literally walking distance from my house to Norman North. So
we'll talk offline in the green room, and we may we'll talk offline in the green room about that. So
yeah.
I'll be about that. But I think there's a chance that there could be an in-state quarterback for 2028 that factors in there. He's obviously, after spring ball, Arbuckle will go off campus. You can scout off campus. He'll see kids throwing the ball in their high school spring practices and those sort of things. He'll probably do a national thing, see what he wants to do. But I think Nash Henry could be a factor in this. And like I said, he played really well last year. He struggled against a couple of the power teams. Sooners for life. Let me rephrase this. Ty Simpson's little brother is from Tennessee, plays at some private school at Tennessee. Ty Simpson's dad is like the head coach at UT Martin, I think. So that's that. But Ty Simpson's little brother is the only 2028 quarterback that has a Sooner offer right now. And what I'm saying is that as we get closer and closer to the summer, OU probably needs to offer another high school quarterback, right? You can't just have one offer out there and just recruit one guy. You've got to have a couple of offers and play at least one or two. And I think Nash Henry could end up being somebody that OU considers. A lot of runway with this kid, big-time athlete. I think it's possible that, OU's not bringing him in for spring practice and giving him and he's the only 2028 quarterback they've brought in that I know so far for spring practice. So they're not doing that unless they have some serious interest in the kid and some intentions to continue monitoring him. But again, but maybe Ty Simpson's younger brother shows up for the spring game on Saturday. I don't think no one's reporting that. But like I said, that's where we got 2027 quarterback recruiting done. So 2028 is already moving to the forefront, and I think Nash has a lot of development runway. He's a big kid, really good athlete, big arm. So I think there could be something there. We'll keep track of that story.
All right, keep it going.
All right. Also, 2029 quarterback, and this was reported by Josh McCuistion, Jamin Reed. Also visited OU as well, and he's from Altus. And I can't remember the last time, Chris, OU signed somebody from Altus.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to have to go back in the Wayback Machine and think about that. He's a freshman, so he's a 2029 kid. He's got a big frame. He's 6'3", 195. His freshman film's really good. He's making a lot of big plays. He had something like 3,000 yards passing, 500 yards rushing, 40 TDs playing out at Altus. His film's really good, good mobility, live arm, making playmaker. So, Buckle's making some moves and getting younger quarterbacks on campus to size them up and evaluate them.
Looking at... Unless you want to keep moving on and answer questions, I'm just over here scouring, looking at the comments or whatever, because it looks like we got some questions and stuff.
Well, let's just go to them real quick before we move into people I think who could be at spring. All right. There's nothing indicating Gideon Gash is going to be at the spring game. I would love to. I would love to. I'd love to say that I got something different on that because I do think he is kind of a wild card in this recruiting class. With everything going on at Cheetah, he would be a Cheetah. He would be a Cheetah player that you could, you know. We were talking with Jay last night, and Jay was talking about, are Cheetah players more portal guys? Is that what OU's going with? And I think Gideon Gash would be kind of one of your high school, elite portal guys that OU could develop from scratch. Kind of like what would have happened if Daniels had Kendall Daniels had been a Sooner from the hop.
Oh shit! Excuse my language. That would have been insane.
That's what Gideon Gash could be. I mean, if you want to imagine what Kendall Daniels out of was it Beggs? Is that where it's from?
Out of Beggs.
Yeah, would have been like as a Sooner from the hop. That's what Gideon Gash could be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it could be very interesting. But I don't know that he's. Yeah, I'm ready for Gabe to kind of commit to OU and get in the class. But yeah, so I think it's hopefully he's at the spring game. He can just swing by for the spring game since he's a Mustang. So we'll see. So, but definitely the guys that it looked like have confirmed on social media that are going to be there. For obviously Elijah Harmon, the verbal commitment from California, who we talked about last night, is going to be on campus. He didn't make the Future Freaks, and he's all over OU on social media. So getting him back on campus is a huge sign. Jalen Scott will be there. Jamison Roberts will be there. Jamison Roberts will be bringing his high school teammate, Keone Snipes, who's a big edge for 2028 that has an OU offer. There's a kid from California coming from St. John Bosco, Brandon Nash, for 2028. He's a top 150 kid for 2028 already. He's a safety type, 6'1", 190 pounds, and he's got some connections in the Oklahoma City area, so that could help if OU gets interest. He's got some family in the Oklahoma City area, so that could help if OU's making a move there. Yohila Wolfgram, the big defensive end, or the neck, as everyone's calling him, is going to be on campus. Michigan just did a song and dance with him, so OU now gets a chance to do theirs. He's got connections with both Crew Jones and Bode Sparrow. Neither of those guys will be at the spring game. They came for the Future Freaks. They're not, as it doesn't look like right now, they're coming back for the spring game. I think OU. They'll be back for their official visit from that perspective. But, like Cooper Witten's going to be back on campus. He couldn't make Future Freaks for some reason. But you're also going to get, Cooper Hackett, Caden Penny, and, Seneca Driver is going to be back in Norman, which means OU will have had a touch point with Seneca pretty much every 12 weeks they've gotten him back on campus. So, they're keeping that momentum going with him. A guy I talked about a little bit last night, Milan Green, is this 2027 wide receiver from St. Louis. I can't find junior film on him, but his sophomore film is fantastic looking. I mean, it's, like you remember when Hollywood just would have that like extra gear and just pull away from folks. He's kind of flashing some of that in his highlights.
So is he? I got a little bit confused. I was like, is he a receiver or is he a running back?
He's a receiver. He's a special teams returner receiver.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was looking at stats. I thought he was a running back, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. It looked like he had a burst. He had a nice little burst to him.
Yeah, like guys are close to him. He's like, let me kick into turbo mode. From NCAA. I don't know where OU is with Trent Blaylock. That's a good question. They are obviously still involved. Maybe it comes down to whether Juju Johnson chooses OU or not. If he doesn't, I think that opens up a slot for Trent Blaylock, and OU tries to close that.
I may have glossed over that, but is
Robert, which Johnson are you talking about? Juju Johnson? If you're talking Juju, there's no indication Juju will be at the game. No, not right now. But that can change. It's only Monday. And the Bode Sparrow update is, guys, you know how I feel about this. I think Bode Sparrow is part of the class, and we're just waiting for him to commit. So that's where I think that name is. So it's like I said, it's early. Couple of other names to watch from 2028 that have confirmed they're coming. Baron Marshall, a wide receiver from Overland Park. He is our new kickers teammate. So Robert, I'm hearing nothing about Juju Johnson being on campus. That doesn't mean he won't be there. But right now, no one's saying that. So Baron Marshall, who's the teammate of our new kicker, Trace Rudd, will be on campus. He's been to OU several times. He came to a game last fall. A linebacker from Georgia for 2028 they really like, called Jay Shell, has also talked about being on campus. He's somebody they really like at linebacker. He would be a top guy at linebacker for them. He's getting really good offers. And then there's a safety from Indiana who I think is kind of connected to our two Indiana signees in 26 called Drake Kohler, who's on social media talking about coming. He's like 6 foot, 195 pounds. He's pretty highly rated for 28 so far. I haven't looked at his film. I need to go back and do that. But overall, they've got some names coming in. They've got 28 names coming in. I think this list will probably double by the time game day arrives. From that perspective, but yeah, that's some of the guys they got coming in. Commitment. The one name I've not heard anything about, Jay, and I mentioned it last night, is Gus Corsair just visited Oregon. He did his Oregon visit. So I think that's the one big visit he kind of wanted to take before maybe deciding. So if he was to get back on campus, I think there's a good chance he would end up committing to OU. He was all ready to commit, I think, at some point, and then he started getting a lot of attention from bigger schools, and he decided he wanted to take some visits. He's had a chance to take some visits. Same thing that Gabriel Osborne has done. They've had a chance to go to some places, see some places. So, but if OU can get him back on campus, it wouldn't shock me if they couldn't close that recruiting out. But I've got nothing saying that he's coming. He's coming down for the game yet. Could be a late decision from him as well. So, like I said, he's been on the road the last couple of weekends.
I keep talking about that. Hey, here's a quick question, real quick, from Jimmy Satterfield.
Yeah, he could. I mean, he's really athletic. He's got a big frame. He's 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. But he's also just exactly what OU wants at safety. So from that perspective, so I think it's kind of a double-edged. Do you want to? Because I think one of the things coming out of spring is that OU probably needs to bulk up their safety room a little bit. So I think coming out of spring, we'd maybe like one more safety. It would have been nice if Markel Ford hadn't been hurt and maybe had a full spring, and we were like, okay, he's going to be entering the mix there and provide some depth. So I think if you get Bode Sparrow and Jalen Scott, OU probably might be looking at a third safety. I mean, that could be Gideon Gash. You could play him at safety or Cheetah. They were looking at a kid called Pole Mowola from California who just reclassified. He was going to visit OU, but he just committed to UCLA. UCLA is on a little bit of a hot streak. Is it Chesney? Is that his name?
I believe so. I mean, yeah.
That sounds like right. The guy from the old James Madison coach.
Yeah.
No, Signetti Jr. Signetti 2.0. He's kind of got UCLA, a little hot right now. People are committing to them, and they're all like, it's different in UCLA. It's going to be different this time. It's going to be better. So, as we know, hope runs, springs eternal.
Jim Mora.
Springs, so let's put up Urban Engine's message here. All right. We'll get to that in just a sec. So, all right. So I think, Chris, there's a chance OU swings back to some of these UCLA kids once these kids start seeing UCLA getting, if UCLA starts getting knocked around in the fall, like with their difficult schedule, about what's going about, they will probably struggle heavily in the fall, and it's a little bit like Kentucky, right? Will Stein's selling a lot, then they'll hit the field, and some of those vibes and energy are gonna dissipate a little bit. We see it all the time, right? And some of these programs that have been struggling change the coach, they get a big bounce in spring recruiting, and then the fall hits, and everyone's like, well, they still look bad. All right, Urban Engine, let's just run. If you haven't been on the podcast before, I'll run you down the Samaj Stanford issue. So, Samaj, I think he wants to leave the state. I think that's issue one. Issue two, his sense of his NIL worth and OU's sense of that don't really match up. And we're having some kind of disconnects in those early conversations. And then in January, OU pretty much got like a silent verbal from Jalen Scott. He didn't go public until March, but OU pretty much knew in January that they'd won that recruiting battle. And that's why you saw all the predictions to OU for Jalen Scott back in January, because it became pretty much known. And I think OU just decided Jalen Scott is as good or better than Samaj Stanford. And Bode Sparrow is the big safety that they want in the class, because Samaj Stanford, if I think this would be very different, Chris, if Samaj Stanford was 6'3", 200 pounds. But he's 5'10", 180. So if you're a 5'10", 180 safety, 180-pound safety, Jim Nagy, as we know, is a little bit of an assassin when it comes to traits, right? Those physical traits he wants. And Bode Sparrow is 6'2", 200 pounds. So that's the safety he wants, back there patrolling in the Sooner secondary. I think they'd like to take Stanford as a third safety, but he kind of wants number one safety money, and I think OU views him as being a number 3 safety.
No, I mean, I can't argue with it. I can't go against the grain. I think that you kind of have to trust the evaluation. I mean, could he be a star there? Hopefully he is. Obviously we're wishing well to all these kids. Not going to be.
Well, he may be choosing Texas, so I'm not sure how much. Well, we're really wishing him. Just to be honest, you're at the Horns Down podcast. That I think that says it all. And I would actually caution Stanford from choosing Texas, because generally speaking, Oklahoma high school kids that choose Texas just don't have a lot of luck in Austin. They don't do very well in Austin.
Who was like the last kid from from Tulsa that went down there? Was it the Cobb kid?
Yeah, and he didn't really do much of anything.
Yeah, Marco Cobb or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw an old recruiting name for you. The last Oklahoma kid that went to Texas and was really successful was Russell Gaskamp in the 90s.
Wow.
During the Makovic era. So that's like pretty much ancient history at this point.
Yeah. So,
and Urban Engine, and you're right, Josh Turner, and he didn't do anything in Austin. I mean, he didn't have a great career down there. He was buying the hype of that UT was DBU for that brief stretch where, what's his name, the old DB coach they used to have down there, the guy from Arizona. I can't pull his name, but he chose UT because of that. He didn't have a great career.
Facts. I don't know how we forgot.
Yeah, well, okay, well, I guess. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, he had one good day against OU, but Texas didn't really treat him right. So, that's okay. Casey Thompson, I'll give you that, but Texas didn't treat him right. So,
answer this one on the screen, Chris Mason.
Yeah, I mean, Urban Engine, I guess you got in late, but I talked about 3 in-state players already. So OU is still heavily after Ben Kolar, Case Alexander, and Gabriel Osborne. They want all 3 of those guys. I think they lead for two of them. Case Alexander it's a weird case. If it wasn't for his brother, I would feel more confident in him choosing OU. I still feel like, if you're a linebacker and Brent wants you, that you're kind of silly not to go get, well, as Chris says, your Bachelor of Science in linebacker play at the Brent Venables School of Linebacker Play in Norman. So, and again, you look at Owen Heineke, right? I mean, you're Case Alexander. You're a similar size. You're probably faster, and you're not going to get waylaid by gonna play lacrosse at Ohio State. So, if I was Case, again, it would be different. If he was a different position, I think maybe I'd have a different view on this. But at linebacker, I've watched his film. He would be an absolute elite will linebacker for OU. He could be very good. To me, it just makes too much sense. But, we'll see how it shakes out. Again, the pull of playing for or around his brother might be big for the family, not to be split between going to Iowa State and OU games. But, they're in Washington, so going to OU games is not – Washington, Oklahoma. So going to OU games is not exactly difficult. So those are the three in-state guys left. 2028 in-state. Like I said, I talked about Nash Henry. There's some 2028 players, that are the class of 28 in-state is not going to be as good as this year's. And you've got 3 5-stars for the first time in 25 years, so you're not topping that. But we talked about a guy last week, and we've talked about him on this podcast a number of times. Camion Compton-Nero from Tulsa. He plays for the Rejoice Christian. Was on campus last week, and he's a borderline 5-star for 2028. I bet he's the number one player in state for 2028. And OU's got a big lead with him. He's best friends with Xavier Okafuleze, and he saw like 4 OU home games last year with Xavier. They came down like almost every week to watch OU. And that kid was 6'2", 180, and he now looks like he's 6'4", 200, and he's still got 20 months before he would sign with anybody. The kid looks huge, and he's an unreal athlete.
All right, Chris Mason. Let me go ahead and ask. Let me steer ship just for a second. Let me ask you some questions, man. Let's ask the hard hitting questions.
Yep.
Who do you believe? Okay, on one hand, I guess the first question would be like, hey, who do you think would commit at the spring game or soon after? Then also, who are the group of kids, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or it is 5 kids, right? I don't care how many you name, but who are the kids that you say, hey, these kids are going to be on campus. There's no way that OU can let them off campus, even if they're in a 28 class. But you say there's no way they can let them off campus without getting something, either solid or just outright verbal or something like I really want these kids in this class.
Okay, well, I would say the guys that you want to try, and let's just say for 28, the 3 guys I would say you want to grab a lead with. Okay. Barron Marshall, this wide receiver from Kansas, he's 6'3", 190 pounds. Top 100 kid in the country. Looks like he looks like the kind of big receiver. If you pass on big receivers in this class in 27, Chris, which we talked about, you want to get some big receivers in 2028, right? And if you could keep and establish a lead with Barron Marshall, that would be very good. Jay Shell, there's this kid from Georgia that they love at linebacker. So if you could get him, he's away from Georgia. Georgia wants him. That's going to be a tough pull. But if you can, in this spring game, this weekend he's in Norman, if you can start establishing a foothold there, that would be huge. And then this kid from California, from St. John Bosco, he's a safety. I think OU needs to bulk up their safety classes in 27 and 28. He's 6'1", 195 pounds. He's got family connections in the Oklahoma City area. If you can start establishing a foothold with that kid, I think that would also be big. Those 3 guys are all top 100 type talents. Yeah, it's a revenge tour. This is really when OU took the commitment from Michael Davis and Mikael McCrary, and that they still want Juju Johnson and Gabriel Osborne. They just don't have room for Daniel Yebbitt. They don't want to confuse Gabriel Osborne thinking that some other big in-state cornerback is preferred over him. So they just don't. They want Osborne to be the focus. So that's why they're not really making a move with Daniel Yebbitt, even though he has been re-ranked and he's now sort of a 4-star by 247, and they're kind of pumping up his rankings. Topher, yeah, I was kind of expecting Oregon to think they're in good spot, but this is, this Corsair recruiting's been is a marathon, not a sprint. And Oregon just ran the 100 meters. OU's running a marathon. It's a two-year marathon they've been running with Corsair. Presuming OU there's not some massive NIL difference. I think Corsair would be much more comfortable playing for Bill in Oklahoma than going out to Eugene. I'm sure he had a great visit. Oregon does a great job. They do a great job recruiting. But I just think, that's probably his second trip to Oregon. He's been a Norman 13 times over the last 2 years. So, I just think the weight of that will be more of a deciding factor. No, I don't think OU gets George Toya. I think they go for Sione Falila instead. I think they prefer him. They think he's more of a true nose guard. And if you look at the 3 techs in spring ball right now, right? It's Ozawalu, it's Tank Carrington, it's Nigel Smith. So, but where's OU a little weaker? They're a little weaker at the nose guard spot. So that's why they got Tevin Robertson from Mississippi, and that's why they want Sione Falila from California. He's 6'3", 310. And I think OU's a little concerned that George Toya is 6'1", 285, 290, or 6 foot, 280, 290. They want a bigger kid, someone who can play at 315, like Jaden Jackson. If you watch Sione Falila's film, there's some heavy Jaden Jackson in there with the way he collapses the pocket and is just an immovable force in the run game. That I think OU views the upside there greater.
Well, that's definitely in line with the stuff that we've been talking about for the last
couple weeks,
honestly, on and off camera. So
and people are projecting. You're already seeing national guys projecting Sione Falila to verbally commit to OU. That's the prediction they're making. So if you have Falila and Tevin Robinson, and you've got Elijah Harmon as sort of your swing guy, and then a name I threw out there is the Yavin Zion kid from Arizona, who they like as the future 3-tech. That kid's 6'4.5", 265, and he's quick, powerful, and I think they're thinking that they can move him inside like they did with Nigel Smith and like they're going to do with Ozawalu, and his upside once you move him inside, significantly increases. That they can put 20, 30 pounds on him, so he's 6'4", 295, and just quick, long arms and quick, which you do not. Offensive linemen do not like defensive tackles with long arms. That's a danger point for them. So. And this kid's got a serious wingspan.
All right, people, y'all got any more questions? Y'all know we're here for a good time, not a long time. First off, though, before we get to any more questions, definitely go ahead and like this video. Subscribe to both channels, Horns Down Podcast and Sooners 360. Go and check out the Patreon if you have some time. Be on the lookout because Chris Mason is definitely going to drop another pod this week, recruiting pod, on Thursday morning. And also, guys, we may be back Saturday just talking about just kind of recapping the spring game. Hopefully we'll have maybe some film, some things that we can show as well. I know I'll definitely be there. So if you're there, definitely holler at us. But also give a shout out to our our sponsor, Kaizen Performance. If you're in the Norman area or in the OKC Metro, definitely go check those guys out, Kaizen Performance. Last but not least, guys, one more thing just to let you guys know. We were on with Jay last night with Unfair Sports, Chris Mason and I. And so kind of gave you, we talked recruiting, we talked just excitement about the spring game. We also gave you kind of another part two of the whole Heineke situation. So if you haven't seen that, if you liked or listened to a little bit of what I talked about last week with the arguments and all the rest of that stuff, you'll definitely want to go over there and check that out as far as part two as we ramp up closer to that on Thursday, that Heineke hearing. So kind of put it like that. We had a part one last Thursday episode, and then we had a part two last night on Jay's podcast, kind of going over obviously the factors and everything for that. So if you want to hear kind of from a lawyer's perspective, definitely check out both episodes. But Chris Mason, looks like I think we got some other questions.
We do. So I think a lot of it depends upon if OU can keep Trevon Hall from Alabama and stop him from going to Alabama. So I think that's the issue. And right now it seems like the additions of Jalen Scott and the additions of Jamison Roberts has helped that, right? He knows these kids from 7-on-7 and from playing in Alabama. So I think now he's got his buddies are in the OU class. I think that stabilized things greatly, and Alabama's going to have to try and work through that. So I think if they keep Trevon Hall, I think OU stays at 3 unless a big elite wide receiver makes his way into Norman, becomes available for the Sooners. So someone with some size to add some variety to the room.
Real quick, definitely support the Huddle podcast. Hey, Drew England, as you guys know, is one of our dear friends of all of our shows. So definitely go check him out. Gotta do a quick plug for him. He's back in full effect with his pods and everything. So definitely go check out our guy. Let's see. Lucas has another question. He said, "What about Sam Nelson?"
It looks like OU's more focused on Miles Smith from Michigan, the guy I've talked about a number of times on this pod. If I was looking at their film, Miles Smith just seems to have a little bit more of an edge to him, and they're also interested in this Yahula Wolfgram kid. So I think Sam Nelson's going to end up at maybe Arkansas or K-State. But he kind of had a window to choose OU and kind of started looking at other places. So now OU's got some other guys in the mix. I think if he wanted to commit right now, OU might be like, well, let's take some official visits and see where you are. So from that perspective, but I think, like I said, I think he had an open window where he could have jumped on board, and then other kids have come in, and now OU's like, well, we're trying to figure out who we want to be. Who's going to be the other defensive ends we add to the class to sync up with Crew Jones. So we'll see. I think it's a possibility. OU could sign a big class. So is this Drew? This is somebody not committed to OU, right? If that's the case, based upon the guys out there, and I'm presuming Bode Sparrow is going to end up in this class, right? He's not technically committed, but I think he's sort of in the class. If there's one more guy I would like to add to this class, and I'm going to talk about guys who are uncommitted only, it is Gideon Gash. Like I said, when you talk about what that kid could be at Cheetah for OU, how Brent could use him, it's Isaiah Simmons, All-American type level. Guys, OU's got a lead for Osborne. I'm taking this from a perspective of someone I don't think OU leads on. I want Gabe Osborne, don't completely, but I think OU leads there. So I'm talking about a kid that I think that's more in play, someone who I think might not sign with OU. If I could have one guy of the players not leaning to OU, it would be Gideon Gash, I think, because I just think that kid at safety / Cheetah for OU could be an Isaiah Simmons type All-American. Scott Walker, Gabe Osborne's going to play cornerback for the Sooners, unless he put on like 20 pounds and grew some more. Maybe you'd move him. Maybe you'd move him to safety, but they're recruiting him like they're going to leave him at cornerback. I think that's it, Chris. Trolling through the comments. I think that's pretty much it.
Oh, it said Corner Scott. My fault. I thought you said Connor Scott. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know why. I was like looking at that.
And Bishop is right. Trayvon Hall is a battalion dog, and so is the Snell kid, the Shell kid who's coming in, Jay Shell. That kid at linebacker is just he's a Brent Venables linebacker. Let me just put it that way. He is a Danny Stutzman like Brent Venables linebacker, the kid from Georgia who's coming to visit this weekend.
All right. Well, people, hey, definitely wipe your feet. Go ahead, like the video, smash that like button, hit all those notification bells as well. Let's go ahead and definitely try to get both of these channels here to 1,000 and keep pushing Jason up to 5,000 as well if he hasn't already hit that. So with that being said, guys, we'll be back sometime this week. But until then, definitely keep an eye out, because if there's any commitments or anything like that, we'll definitely try to have another breakdown video like we did for Isaac Coffrin. So with that being said, people, be easy.